So my name's Tommy Walker. I'm a British journalist who covers news outside of Britain, so foreign news to us. I've been a travel journalist for about 10 years.
So do you have Russian colleagues or friends? And if you have, what do you say about situation in Ukraine?
Yeah, I have a friend. I have a couple of friends from Russia. I went to the Russia World Cup a few years ago. My friends there, one friend who I've spoken to, she said that she hated the war. She hated what was going on. It's clear what Russia's the aggressor, right? So.
Okay, so Tommy, I have a few questions for you. And to start with, please tell our audience who you are and where you come from, and what influenced on your choice of profession. And was it a desire for extreme or high salary, or maybe a wish to become a popular? And how long have you been a correspondent, and what trouble spots have you been to?
Trouble spots. Okay. So my name's Tommy Walker. I'm a British journalist who covers news outside of Britain, so foreign news to us. I've been a travel journalist for about 10 years, and then I went into news and covered sort of political issues, unrest, humanitarian issues within the last 5 years. So yeah, I'm from Britain, from the UK, and from England, actually, the north of England. People might think my accent is Scottish or maybe even Irish, but I'm from the north of England. So anyway, yeah, so I've been, in terms of what's happening with Ukraine, in terms of issues, political issues, and obviously this is conflict and war, this sort of work I've been doing for, like I said, 4 or 5 years. I worked in Hong Kong in 2019 during the protests there. I covered Myanmar's, Burma's military coup, which has transitioned into a civil war last year, and I've covered some protests in Thailand as well. Yeah, so that's sort of me, I guess. I do mostly text journalism. I do photography, and I do the odd video as well, whether it's on the camera or behind the camera. So I guess I'm multimedia. In terms of the job I'm doing now, I've always wanted to do what I'm doing now since I was 7 years old. So it's something that's came at the right time for me. I could have done this 10 years ago in my 20s, but I wanted to enjoy my 20s a bit more without having to think about work all the time. I think this job, it consumes you a lot. You think about it every day. It doesn't leave you. You don't have weekends off and forget about it. It's a job that you have to constantly be aware and alert and keep within the news and know what you're going to do next. So, but this job, yeah, like I said, I wanted to do since I was 7 years old. I've had an interest in sort of unusual, adventurous sort of a way of living. But in terms of the actual news I've wanted to cover, I've always been interested in how countries do things differently to the UK. So that's why I've never been a domestic journalist in the UK, never reported on anything in the UK. It's always been about news that is outside. So that's my interest. I just become attracted to it more. In terms of going to Ukraine, why did I do this? I think it's something that I hesitated for a while to cover because I'm predominantly based in Asia. So I work over there, but obviously with Ukraine being so well, because it's continuing. Sometimes you see these sort of things around the world, and they're only for a few weeks or months. But because it looks like it's going to be a long war, or longer war than people might have anticipated. I just felt that I had to come and try and cover this. I'm from Europe. Obviously, to see a European war is surreal in some ways, because I think as a British, being from England, our grandparents and their parents suffered the war during in 1939, 1945 with Nazi Germany. So we have grown up with, British people especially, we've grown up with stories about how, you know, they survived the war, or this happened during the war, whether it's rations for food, whether the people were hiding under in basements, and things like this. So that stays with you for a long time. So I think, from my perspective, and maybe why a lot of British people are involved or interested or want to help Ukraine and or be involved in this war, if you like, is because we have this knowledge and memory of what war is, and we've heard the stories. So that's my issue. Obviously, it's my sort of kind of work anyway, because we're seeing a country attack another country. We're seeing basically a bigger country attack the smaller country, and there's other instances of that around the world. Being in Asia, China is trying to sort of intimidate Taiwan, which again says Taiwan is part of China, when Taiwan is like, well, we have our own democracy, we have our own government, we're self-ruling, we're not part of China. And again, obviously, this can be relative in terms of Russia, what Russia thinks Ukraine is. So I think it's just, as a journalist, as someone who wants to report on what's happening, you feel compelled to do this because you feel sorry for Ukraine and they shouldn't have to be dealing with this. So that's why I've been covering it in Ukraine, and hopefully I can keep covering it and keep it within the news.
Thank you for your answer. So, have you ever had a situation when you were put pressure on by high-ranking officials? For example, you were forbidden to take pictures or publish some materials, something like that.
Just trying to think. I wouldn't say you're not allowed to publish anything, because I think, no, I don't think I've had that situation, because if I have the story or if I have the photo, then I decide if I publish it. So if it's already been taken or captured, then, but in terms of being prevented to take a photo, or maybe a few times when you're at protests, police might say, don't take photos here. Or I think even in Ukraine, actually, in Dnipro, I was taking photos of the city, and some Ukrainian police stopped me and searched my everything for like 30 minutes. Why am I doing this sort of thing? And all I was doing was taking a photo of the city, nothing sensitive. So there's instances, but I think, look, I work in press freedom, on a press freedom team for Voice of America. I do work for them, and so we cover press freedom around the world. And I understand there is challenges for journalists and reporters. There will be authorities and officials who might try and prevent people from working and things like that. Yeah, I guess it's part of being a journalist nowadays, because with how connected the world is, and how easy it is to see a photo from this side of the world to the next, or read a report from around the world, with social media being that medium, being that that connection in between. In a sense, journalists have got so much more power to cover things quickly and get a lot of visuals and quotes and stories out. So there is more. I kind of expect for authorities to sometimes try and prevent journalists from what they're doing. It's not nice. We don't agree with it, but I think it's part of the job today in 2022.
Okay. I don't know about next question. So, do you have Russian colleagues or friends? And if you have, what do they say about the situation in Ukraine?
Yeah, I have a friend. I have a couple of friends from Russia. I went to the Russia World Cup a few years ago. So I went to the FIFA World Cup in 2018. I enjoyed my time there. I like the country. I like the people from the people I met. But my friends there, one friend who I've spoken to, she said that she hated the war. She hated what was going on. She didn't really want to talk about what was it like in the news or what news was being portrayed to the people. I just felt, well, she knows I'm a journalist, so she didn't want to stir the pot. But yeah, from her short comments to me, she said that she really hated what was going on. That's all I can say because there's nothing more. Yeah.
Okay, so does the fact that you have Russian friends affect the objectivity of your reports?
No, not at all. I don't think of them when I report. I think about what I've seen, who I've spoken to, and my own research and background of what's happening. So it doesn't affect me at all. It's clear what Russia's the aggressor, right? So everything that came from Russia, that's obvious. They attacked. Even if whatever prelude or story or narrative they want to spin about, oh, they needed to do this, if you are the aggressor, you know, that particular event, i.e. this war, has been started because of your actions. So it doesn't matter which way you look at it, that's the fact. So it doesn't affect knowing anyone in Russia, or sort of it doesn't affect how I report, and I just report what I see. Mostly the stories I'm doing in Ukraine are more people stories, and also they're centered around interviews and what people have seen and experienced. So that's my sort of job, is to get those stories out so the people can relate to what's happening. And war is felt when it's humanized. When you speak to the people, that's when you feel what is happening more, because not everyone's a military expert, and not everyone's a weapons expert, and not everyone's a political expert, not the everyday person. Everyone sees little things in the news and they might think, oh, that's terrible, they don't like that, but a lot of people don't understand what it means. But I think if you read stories about the human aspect of people suffering in Ukraine, that affects everyone, because in life everyone suffers. So it's so important that for me it's just to keep with them sort of stories. And knowing someone in Russia, or however that is suffering, and as long as someone is genuine and honest, of course, that's never came into question. Those stories are important to tell the world.
Oh, okay, thank you. And maybe some leaders of European countries recommend Ukraine make concession to Russia in order to achieve peace in the world. And what do you think? This is morally right?
Well, I mean, it's, if European countries believe that Russia needs some small victories for this to stop, then is this morally right? No, I don't think so. But at the same time, everyone has their own agenda. Maybe people just want to see the stop of the war as soon as possible, and they believe that's the quickest way. But look, if Russia has been taken over, I mean, what they say now is 20% of a sovereign country like Ukraine, then how can that be right? It's not right for the everyday person. Of course, for people who look at it straight, that's not right. But we do have to remind ourselves that politicians and some major business owners who have big influence on these politicians and things like that, they look at the world through the business lens. They look at the world as, in a different sense, and they can be cold, and I don't agree with that, but they just want things to go back to a new normal where everything is running again. People are making, economy is turning over. There's the ceasefire. There's, that's what some politicians want. So do I agree with it personally? No. Am I surprised about it? No, because that's how some politicians work. They just want to make money. They just want to, which is good. They just want to have ceasefire, of course, but they don't really look at the damage it might have done to Ukraine. You know, it's like if the only people who feel it, the only people who will feel betrayed and disgruntled and angry that a country has taken over a fifth of their country, for in this case, is Ukraine, because it's your country. Everyone else can be sympathetic, and everyone else can be like, "Oh, this is terrible," but they don't understand it until it happens to them. So they don't fully understand. Well, they understand it, but they don't fully feel it until it was happened to them. So, is it right? No, of course not. You know, Ukraine's a sovereign country. This war is, you know, needless, and but it doesn't surprise me that some leaders want to say, okay, we'll give Putin a victory just so we can stop now, because it's the easy way out and it costs them less as well. So maybe some of these countries are providing supplies, aid, whatever, and money to Ukraine. If the war stops, they save money as well. So there's two things we're looking at here. Like, is it right? No. But can it be expected from some officials? Yeah, I guess so. It's just the way of the world. It's politics.
Review. Thank you. And last question, okay? Taking into account your opportunity to assess the situation from different sides of conflicts and countries, how do you see the further situation or development of this military conflict?
It's one thing that I think is very difficult to see right now, because in the Western media, everyone talks about how Ukraine was, you know, winning. But if you look at the facts, what's happening, what the reports say now is that if Russia is controlling 20% of Ukraine, that is such a, I mean, there's, you could look at it two ways, right? Because you look at, like, okay, if Russia doesn't take over the whole of Ukraine, it doesn't reach Kiev, but it gets 20%. Some countries, some leaders might think that's a success, because you get to keep Kiev and you get to keep Lviv, Dnipro, you know, all these places. Odessa is still, you know, Mykolaiv, Kharkiv. These places that might have been attacked, you get to, they're under your control. It's obviously, if Russia was to take Donbass, some people might look at that as a victory on the Russian side. They could use that, even though they wanted to take the whole of Ukraine. If they take Donbass, they will tell their own people and officials and oh, this is a victory, we've taken Donbass. So it's very difficult to look at how this is going to play out, because Ukrainian officials, I think Zelensky has said that we're not going to stop until everywhere is part of Ukraine again. Whereas Russia, you know, as much as what's said about Russia, they do seem in this sort of mood where they are just, okay, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. We're going to, like, almost like they're a bit out of reality of what's happening around them. They just, you know, so it's very difficult to call, because on one side you've got Ukraine, who are done amazing in defending and pushing Russian forces out, and they've got this weaponry from the West which has helped them a lot. But you've got this disregard for the losses on the Russian side, and they've got a bigger army, of course. So it's very difficult to look at. If I was going to make a quick prediction, I would say there will be peace talks this year in some regard, and that might stop some ceasefire in some places. Like there might be a ban on firing against Kiev, or, you know, a ban on certain missiles from Ukrainian side, but they'll be fighting for many years. It's not going to stop at little skirmishes and things like that. So I don't know. It's difficult to predict. It's scary to think, because, you know, it's really vital for democracy around the world, and for Ukraine especially, but for democratic countries who do lead the world, whatever you listen to, Russia and China, democratic countries in the world are the countries that people look up to and control and have the say. It would be a really big blow if Ukraine was to lose to Russia, because it would be a big blow to the rest of the world. But more importantly, I think it's more about Ukraine and Ukrainian people. You know, you have a country, you don't want it to be taken over by Russia illegally with war crimes. So I think they will fight until the end, but it's very difficult to call right now. I think it's maybe we're going to be talking about this next year, and we might have a better idea then. So.
Okay, thank you. Tommy, thank you. Thank you for your job. Thank you for your words. Thank you for support my country. And as we say, all will be Ukraine. Yes.
Okay, no problem. Thanks so much for having me. And let me know if you want to speak again.
So thank you, and maybe see you in future.
Okay, no problem. All right. See you.
See you.